This morning, snow, ice, and frigid temperatures sweeping across the nation. 20 states under a state of emergency.
Well, with that in mind, let's coop up in the garage and build something. I wanted to work on something a little bit smaller this time. My garage isn't heated, and I wanted to have some fun in the snow with my family. A phone stand it is. One issue I ran into a lot during my last project was not having anywhere consistent or convenient to put my phone. It would either get in the way, get covered in sawdust, or I would just straight up lose it. I didn't really have anything in mind as far as what I wanted this to look like, but I wanted to express that I took my time on it and that I cared about it. I really liked the idea of a continuous grain look, something more organic with rounded edges, or that it looked like one solid piece of wood. I made this channel as a record of my learning as I experiment with woodworking and DIY projects, so there had to be a challenge somewhere. So I decided that my challenge this time around was going to be accurate cuts and glues. Spoiler alert, I still have a lot to learn. I have this leftover piece of walnut from the last video I made about the coasters, and instead of wasting it, I wanted to put it to good use. First stop is the table saw. I need to rip this thing down to the final width of the holder. Since this step only needs to happen once, I figured it'd be easier to get it out of the way early. And now that we've got it cut to about 4 inches wide, I need to go about flattening it. The board that it came from was about 1 inch thick, and I only need about a 1/2 inch. One thing I kept running into when looking for DIY inspiration or how-to videos is that a lot of the creators already had the tools and the space that they needed, which is great for knowing what I need to look out for down the road, but not so much for my wallet. I wanted to start from what I had on hand or stick to the cheapest option for as long as I can. So, instead of spending hundreds of dollars on a planer, brand new or off of Facebook, and that I don't have the space for, I decided to spend half the money and get this router and a board flattening jig. It's not perfect, but with a little bit of sanding, it does exactly what I need it to. Another goal that I had for this channel is to build a community of people who either have skill sets like me and, honestly, are starting from nothing, or people who are masters of their craft. That way we could all come together and learn in one place. And with that being said, if you'd like to follow along with my progress and my skill development, or if you have suggestions as to what I should build next, or how to refine my craft, I'd really love it if you'd consider subscribing, or leaving a comment, or just dropping a like. And before anybody else says it, I'm gonna have to figure out my dust collection. So for now, I think the shop vac does pretty well. If you notice the lines on the board, you're not seeing things. That's from the router doing its job. From what I understand, it just stands up the grain against itself. But that's nothing that a little bit of 80 grit sandpaper can't fix. I sanded through the grits starting at 80 grit, working my way up to 120, then 220, making sure to spray water in between to stand up the grain. The end result was a board as smooth as butter, and all those pesky lines removed. Who doesn't love the look of a good hunk of walnut? Next up was the chop saw. I went ahead and took off as little material as I could from both ends just to get them flat and square, but even though I went as slow as I possibly could, I still ended up with some tear out. If you know how to fix this, please let me know in the comments. I then cut out the 3 main parts for the holder: the base, the support, and the part that the phone would lean up against. However, this is an area where I still have a lot to grow in. I felt like I did everything I could to get these joints to fit together perfectly. I even hit it with some sandpaper later, but it seems like no matter what I tried, I couldn't get the angled cut to sit flush. So that's something I'm going to have to work on for the future. I then forgot to hit record, but I got these 2 pieces glued together, let them dry for a few hours, came back and I glued on the foot. I ended up deciding not to glue the angled piece to the face of the base, but in the end I really do think it turned out for the better. The next step was to get those rounded edges and to kind of get that more organic and continuous look that I was talking about in the beginning. Now, I know this probably isn't the smartest way to use my router, and I don't recommend anybody else does the same, but these clips are extremely sped up, and I was being as slow and as careful as I could be. After all this, I just went back over the piece with some more 220 grit sandpaper. That way we get all the edges and curves nice and smooth, cover up any gaps, and get ready for finishing. For the finish, I got this Odie's oil. It's just a rub on and wipe off, and it leaves a really nice smooth satin finish. And from what the guy told me in the store, it's supposed to seep into the grain and make the wood stronger and harder and be more scratch resistant, which is perfect because this is just going to live on my bench. Now if I was to do this project again, I'd probably add like a charging hole or some way to wirelessly charge it or something along those lines. But like I said before, I was more so trying to work on my cutting and my glue ups, and a little bit of it was to keep myself from going crazy during the snowstorm. I hope you enjoyed your time, and if you want to see more or have recommendations on what I could do better or even something to build in the future, please don't hesitate to share. But with all that said, here's what we ended up with.